Hey all, welcome. Yeah, as you may have heard, there's a new release from Altair, 2022.1, and it has some implications also for the code. So in this video, I want to take a quick look at the breaking or maybe breaking changes, which it has, for example, for a program like the Hypermesh Lattice Mesher, which I did a while back. So let's jump right into it. No further forward. Is it this? I'm sorry. Here. All right. So what do we have here? We have the code, and let's just back up a little. What was that all about? So let's say you have a 3D model and you want to have a lattice structure made out of that, but you want to give it as you want to give in a, for example, a tetra mesh, and you want to have it as rod elements, for example. You can use this software here. And I think in the last video I did something about the CLI. CLI stands for command line interface, and this command line interface was not, yeah, let's say, it was not complete. It was functional, but not really. There were some issues with it, and I corrected that in this branch as well. So you see here, I have a new branch called Feature Update to 2022.1 release of Hyperworks, and I made 4 commits until now onto this one. So what did I do? Well, first, what was missing here was the typo dependency with all the extras, and that's a real game changer. You will see in a minute, but that's pretty cool. And then some housekeeping. I updated the README to include all the help text I wrote in the Hypermesh Lattice Mesher main file. Yeah, but this was not done properly in the README, so I did that and some typos. And then it struck me a little bit because in the task file I have never set up any command for running this thing here. So I just wrote into the README that in order to run it, you have to run it with Python -m and whatever, and then have to figure yourself the way how to get that what you want. But that's not that good of an idea. If you have task file already as a dependency, then better make use of it, I think. So yeah, so I incorporated those tasks. For example, here a help, but that one is also tricky because if you will see later that it's something which enrages me. if you just have a command, you type it in the command line, and then it just says the first thing you get to is well, when you want to know how to use it, then write -- help afterwards. So that's the first thing you do afterwards. But there's actually in Typer you have a setting which a friend of mine, Cody, shout out to you, told me to. So in Typer you can just set it as a default. So it is in default. Now let's walk you through there. I mean, it's getting complicated if I just talk about it and actually not showing you what it's doing. So the old README had just something like that: run the module in a poetry shell via Python -m, and then Hypermesh Lattice Mesher.main. .main is the package main here, or the main Python file, which is then executed. So now if I just copy that and paste that in, it's not a poetry shell. Let's see if that works. No, it's not there because typo is not installed, because the interpreter of the Python, which I'm currently using, which is a mini conda version, this does not have the dependencies installed. So and if you're doing a poetry install or task install, and what you're actually doing, you're creating this virtual environment where all the software you need for this software to execute properly will get installed into this local virtual environment. All right, so this doesn't work, but the README did tell me that you have to use a poetry shell, or you could also do poetry run and then Python -m and whatever. This works too. And you see now that you get in an instant the help. And why is that? Because otherwise you would just say, well, just type dash dash help, and then you get the text here. So yeah. This is actually the thing here in main when you launching the app, which is this Typer app, Typer. No args is help equals true. And I will set that to true in every command line interface I will build from now on, because that's just so way cooler. And also another thing, also thanks to Cody, I know that now, is if you install Poetry, with Poetry, if you install Typer, you do usually something like this. Poetry add Typer, right? Like with every other thing. But the thing is, this has actually some extensions, you could say. And if you want to have all the things, for example, that you have a plot here with colors, so with rich print, instead of the normal standard out print, I guess, you would have to just specify that you want it all. So just some brackets and all in the brackets, and then you're set. So this is what I did. And this also leads to this option in the Poetry TOML file, which you see here. Here, somewhere. No, README, task file. Wrong commit. It is here. You see that here, that in the TOML file you have this extras all. So it's called extras, not extensions, but yeah. So do that. That's a cool thing. And you see now you get a pretty help, which points you out to all the commands. And now the cool thing is that, as I told you, I incorporated the commands into the task file itself. So there's, for example, a task mesh command. So if you want to mesh something, task mesh, this will fail because I have some arguments missing. And here comes another trick. That's also very important. If you are using task and you want to pass along CLI arguments, first thing you want to do is point it here in the task file. So here, CLI args. And the second thing is that if you want to pass no arguments, it's not how you think it is, I think. So task mesh, and then you would have a file name, right? So whatever. This is the wrong way, because the task file has also the option to have subcommands. So for example, task mesh 2D. And if you do that, it says, well, I don't have the command 2D. Yeah, so this is the thing. So what they have come up with is that you have this dash dash, but then an empty space, and then you can have your commands here. So for example, if I have now a file path, this would work. Now it tells me that it does not find the file. So if I have a file, for example, this is task mesh, and the task mesh will now point to a file. So I have to go into the data export, import, I don't know, import, FEM files, small model. Let's copy the relative path, and there's another thing here. You have to use forward slashes. If you use backward slashes, the shell will just, on Windows, the shell will just explode. It will not work. Maybe that's also an issue for Taskbar to look into. I'm not sure, and I would have to ask Cody about that first before I post an issue and make me look like a total idiot. All right, so run that, and then you can see the command is running. All right, but now the thing is, what really surprised me and I was quite happy about is that there's no breaking changes for me in all the commands I tested. So I tested all of those commands. I have it here now. And there's no breaking changes for the new version of Altair Hyperworks. So all TCL commands I used, all the things you can see, the lovely TCL commands still work, right? So this works just the same. Well, maybe it's also just basic, but the other thing, Hypermesh. Yeah, no, it did work all of the same, right? So because I was fearing that maybe a panel command got removed and then I would not be able to execute the TCL commands like I used to, and that's not happened. That has not happened, right? So I'm glad that's the case. So what else you have to change is, and this is important. So I think I have now a file called Hyperworks starter, and in here I specify the version, right? So if you have a different version than I do, you have to change that. And there is the possibility that there are breaking changes. If I would do that more, not just as a hobby, but more professionally, I would have different versions and would just have different versions also for the script or for the coding. And then if there are breaking changes, that I can support different versions, right? But I have now just the goal to support the latest version, also because I want to stay on track and on the updates. So I will just work with that one going forward. All right, is there anything else? Yeah, what did I change in the main code? Yeah, I was talking about the commands with the task file, but actually it's even better. If you don't know how to use the command, for example, yeah, you have task mesh. For sure, it will tell you that it fails if you don't do anything. But now it also gives you the command, right? So this one, I'm actually not sure if that works. It doesn't work like this, does it? I think I have to, yeah, for sure I have poetry run before that. Poetry run. This works. And now, see, you get the arguments and the options. Yeah, arguments. You get the arguments and the help text I set there. So this is also something I changed in the main file. So you see with every method, you see that the file path, which is of type string, is in fact a type or argument, where I don't set a default value here, but I set a help text. And this is displayed when I just trigger the help of the command. But it's even easier. You have task mesh and it fails, and you can just say task mesh dash dash. Now you're passing arguments, then dash dash help, and this should work the same. Right. And now for this, it's more or less easy. It's just one parameter, but you can see, for example, I have this update. Oh man, I have to look myself how this is done in the task file. Maybe I will change that because that's a little bit too long and too complicated to keep in the head, and also with the dashes, I don't know. I don't think you have to use that, but yeah. So task that one, and then dash dash, and again dash dash help. You see, this has a little bit more parameters, and it has also a default value. So I don't know, this does not make any sense, but it will create 10 materials between 0 and 210,000 megapascals for the Young's module. Paths I don't set really. And actually, well, you can see that those are actually not even required. Yeah, because you have default values, right? Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, so you can see, I think that's pretty cool to see about the commands, and that's one strong thing I think when building such command line interfaces, because you have to always walk in the shoes of the user and just think about, well, how does the user feel? Will he throw the keyboard out of the window because you designed a crappy CLI? And I'm trying to get better at that. I know there's still a lot missing. So for example, docs and stuff like that. I will add that in the future, I hope, if I have the time. But for now, it's just another update. A quick update, hopefully not too boring. And you could take a little bit away from it. Yeah, I think that's about it, what I did there. Yeah, and then, yeah, I have to point that out. Yeah, I did some quick dirty fix here because a test was failing. Yeah, actually. Let me tell you that story. If you don't want to listen to that, but you can sign up. But if you want to, I think it's pretty funny. So I was doing here the thing with the paths, right? And actually the problem was that if I just, for example, I want to try the task mesh, and now I need a file path. So what I do, I go to data and then to, I don't know, Hypermesh import FEM files, the small model again, and now I copy path, right? Paste that in here. You have the backslashes. No, that doesn't work. If you do that like that, it will just say, well, I don't know, what is this? Oh, sorry, there was the dash dash missing. So you will see in a minute, it will just not work. It will tell you that there's no such file or directory. And now look at that string very closely. You can see, let me make that a little bit bigger. You can see the dashes are gone, right? There's no dash nowhere. So what's the problem with that? Well, I don't know really. It's task file issue, whatever. So I found, or I searched for a way to just change my Visual Code style so that it would work better. Yeah, did not find that, but I did find it for relative paths. So for relative paths, you can go into the settings and change that. So if I just go to the file again and just copy the relative path, I set it now that if I paste it in, you see it's forward slashes, and that works with the Python and task file and stuff like that. So all good. Now, problem comes up that now my Hypermesh Lattice Mesh program has now just relative paths for all the input file paths I give them. So it will struggle, especially with the TCL commands, because if it writes that as a TCL command, as an out file, TCL file, Hyperworks does not know which is the current working directory. Well, it could know maybe, but it doesn't in the common version. So, what did I do? I did a resolve. So I changed, and that should be also reflected somewhere here. I changed the way of the Hypermesh TCL writer, for example, here, script builder. So in order to have the absolute path, I just resolved it, right? With OS path, apps path. So that means it will look in the current working directory for this file. But now the test was broken because the test had a, is this test? Yeah. So the test has just this my path, and it made then sure that it also equals my path later on. But that did not work. So I just put in a file, but that was a silly idea because this file, which works locally because the current working directory is exactly that on my local machine, does not work with the GitHub run. So this does not work. So, and you have that error here because, yeah. So what did I change now? And that's the latest commit I did. This is a more or less a dirty fix. I would consider that to be a dirty fix. It just looks for the current working directory and replaces backslashes with slashes, because on the working run, it will definitely be on a Linux machine. So then you have to use the slashes, and checks that that path in total equals that one which is outputted, which is exactly, I don't know, it's not showing here, but I can't show that here. Somewhere here, yeah. Self assert equal, and you see that it's equal to write file, and then the path should be the same thing as above here. So if the current working directory is the same, that works. And that works on locally, and also works on the GitHub workflow. All right, so this was a little tangent, but yeah, I think it's interesting to once know that in Visual Studio Code you have the option to just change the behavior for slashes with relative file paths, not with absolute file paths, and how you get around in the testing method, how to do this with the current working directory, that you give that as a parameter, which is then executed and gotten as locally as also in the workflow on the remote machine. All right, I think that's about it for this video. So you could use the code exactly as before, even better now because the task file has other commands available, and also with pretty help. And also the poetry file is now correct and will install Hyper correctly. Yeah, so let me know what you think. I will now more or less stop working actively on this repository for the next time, I think. But there are some cool new features we could also take a look at. For example, I went through that with my student group. They want to do optimization based on the 1D elements. So for example, just the radius. So for different groups and stuff like that. So this could be a thing which we could explore together in a future video or so. But then I also looked a little bit into it, and as far as I know, if you want to do that very easily, you would have to use pbeam-l properties, because they let you access the radius directly as a variable for each. And then there's always the question about, do you really want to have one variable per element, or do you want to group them together? Does it make sense to group them according to direction of the, or orientation, I should say, of the beam elements and stuff like that? And then you have beams and not rods anymore, so you have bending stresses and stuff like that. So it gets a little bit more complicated, and I'm not sure if I have the time and if I want to go that deep into this route. So, but we will see. If you have interest in stuff like that, let me know. That enhances the motivation to get into this. But for now, I will concentrate also on the new tutorials and new stuff, because I need to get more on the latest release of Altair's Hyperworks. And yeah, so this will be the route I will take in the nearer future. All right. As always, thanks for watching, thanks for staying that long in the video, and if you have any questions, comments, just let me know. If you like the video, like it, hit that subscribe button, and yeah, see you guys in the next video. Bye guys.